I've noticed that people have shared in various ways is that we are, in this time in life, in history, where there is so much turmoil and chaos. And I know that for so many of you, you want to be a positive impact and force in this world. In other words, I have heard a lot of you through various ways say something like this: what can I do, right, to help the world right now? I think we know innately that we cannot single-handedly, no one of us can save the world by ourselves. That's not how this thing works. But we all want to do our part. And I think we also are hoping to probably experience some form of relief from the tyranny and onslaught of all of the negative news and information that seems to be overloading our brains and our nervous system. Anyone else, or just me, feel that, right? So in some ways, we're searching for something that might bring peace. And yet what's interesting is something that I've found about the spiritual life, and I wonder if you found this too. There's something about the spiritual life where things are not always as they appear. Things, in fact, are often the opposite of what our human inclinations tend to be. I'll give you an example. When it is our human tendency to look out at the world and to say, when is the world going to change? When is the world going to fix things or get itself together? Wisdom says, look within, right? So when it's our human inclination to look outside, the spiritual path often turns the focus and says, hey, look at the inside. Look at what's going on within yourself. And I find this to be echoed through various spiritual traditions, some of the various teachers whose words, whose messages have become very popular in our world. Think about, I love this great line from Jesus. He said, instead of focusing on the speck in your neighbor's eye, look at the plank in your own eye. Or Buddha, who once said, you can conquer 1,000 people, but the real victor is the person who conquers themselves. Lao Tzu said, knowing others is intelligence, knowing yourself is true wisdom. I don't know about you, but that shift, right? That new way of looking at things, where instead of looking at others, we're looking at the external world, we look at ourselves. I don't know about you, but that is hard for me to do. It takes me quite a long time to make that turn from looking outside to looking inside, from placing responsibility everywhere else but myself to taking my own responsibility. It's hard for me to do, right? It happens all the time in my day-to-day life. Like we have this mini drink fridge in our household, and my partner Olivia and I, she's very particular because this drink fridge is mainly devoted to a very certain kind of drink. It's devoted to sparkling water, and it's devoted to a very specific flavor of sparkling water, and that is plain and plain only. You will not see any other flavor of sparkling water in that drink fridge. You might have a smattering of other drinks, but in general, this small little fridge exists for sparkling water, plain only. And so, there are occasions, every now and again, the door of this fridge might get left cracked ajar, because it is not one of those fancy fridges that some of you have nowadays where it gets cracked open and it starts beeping at you when the door gets left open. It's not that, right? So the door will get left ajar, and the way you find out that it got left ajar is because 3 to 6 hours later, your sparkling water is now lukewarm, unfortunately. So there have been moments where Olivia will come to me and she says, hey, I think the door of the mini fridge got left ajar. Do you know anything about this? And on these occasions, I have said, well, are you sure that you didn't leave the door open? And she says, well, I am very sure. I'm very sure. And so then I will often say, well, is it possible that our back door got left open and a bird came in? And this bird, seeing this collection of refreshing drinks, tried to get into this fridge to parch their beak on a warm summer's day, and in trying to get into this fridge, they couldn't open it. They didn't have the strength with their wings, but the attempt left the door cracked. Is that all possible? And she will say, I don't think so. I do not think so. And it is then and only then that I will finally look within, take responsibility, and say, okay, it might have been me. It might have been me, right? But But that's the length of time that it takes for me to shift from external blaming, external responsibility to internal responsibility. I think we all have a version of this in our lives, but it is during this series that I hope really to just explore the idea that we can make that shift, we can turn, we can reorient ourselves so that when we are hyper-focused on how we might, the world might resolve itself, how others in our lives might fix their problems, instead, we could start to look within and start to ask ourselves, how can I work on myself? And really, the greater question here is, what if by working on myself, by going there first, that is how I might have a greater impact on the world around me? That it starts within and it ripples outward. And so, yes, this series is called Doing the Work. And that video, right, the idea of a workshop, it's just to remind us that, yeah, sometimes the work is hard. It's challenging. I don't know what it means for you, right? That word and what it means in this context, it might look very different for you than it looks for me. But what's universal is we all have areas of our lives where we are growing, where we are becoming, where we are learning to be more loving, right? As the beautiful meditation and as Guy's song invited us to see, that we are all learning to let go. So there's all these areas for us. It's going to look different for you as it does for me, as it does for the person you're sitting next to. It's also going to look different for you now as it might look 6 months from now or 6 years from now. It's fluid, it's changing. What your work is might look different at different times. But we know that these things are challenging. We know that these are areas where quite literally they take a lot of work, right? And it's hard. How many of us have recognized that to be human, right, means that there is going to be plenty of work to do in life, right? To just simply be a human and to show up to our daily lives, there are going to be things that we are invited to work on. There are going to be areas that are not so easy. Yes, there are moments in life where things are easy and flowing, and there are also moments in life where things are not so easy, where it takes work to remain calm. It takes energy to remain centered. It takes a lot of intentionality to stay grounded. And it is in those moments and in those circumstances that there are some clues for us, clues for where our work might be, what it might look like. It is these things that are really opportunities for us to show up to the things that are already in front of us. We don't have to look very far. We don't have to search far and wide for ways to improve ourselves. It's very likely that the things that are right in front of us are inviting us, right? To just say, hey, would you take a look at this? And it's not going to happen overnight. It's something that we just show up to day by day, moment by moment. For any of you, gym people out there, a friend of mine calls it sets and reps, like going to the gym. Every time we're working on something in life, it is an opportunity just to work that muscle ever so slowly, ever so consistently. Last week, our guest speaker, Jim Burklow, he gave this great illustration that a spiritual community is like a gym for love, right? It's a place where we work on and we work out how to be more loving to each other. And I find that in many ways, that's what life is. Life is us working on these various things and invitations to become more loving, to become more kind. If we're going to have all this gym talk, I thought I'd bring some visual aids here with me. Now, I do got to be clear about something because, sometimes I've noticed through social media, I've found that there are pastors who force a prop or illustration of some kind that uses gym equipment because they're like these gym rat pastors that really just are kind of like using the stage as an opportunity to show off how much they can lift. That is not what I'm trying to do here. It's not going to be that impressive if I were to try to do that. Trust me, because that's not who I am. But I'm not like a creatine pastor at all. So, but I did bring some weights because I feel like this is just so. I was thinking about this week, and I just was like, man, this feels really true, at least for me, and it might feel true for you. That there are things in life that are lighter, but there's still something for us to work on, and there are things in life that are quite heavy for us to work on. Here's what I mean. There are things that kind of in our lives are more daily practices, right? Like it might be a daily practice for you. You might have a lighter weight, right? This is a 5. I was hoping for even a 1 or 2. But, because you go to Pilates or something and it's like a 1 or 2 is quite enough because you're doing a lot of this kind of stuff. And I did a Pilates class one time, so I know. So I'm an expert. But I didn't realize at the time that you're not supposed to reach for a 4 or 5 because you're doing way too much stuff. You need like a 1 or 2. But we don't have one of those in our household. So brought this, and it's really to illustrate that there are things in our life, right, that are kind of just baked into our everyday. Things like, just the opportunity to work on patience. And it might not be that any one given moment of working on patience takes everything you've got, right? But over time, throughout the day, moment after moment, you're working on patience. And how many of you know a 5-pound weight all day long is going to be quite heavy, right? Maybe it's an opportunity to just be more calm. What's an opportunity for you where you're like, wow, I could just in this moment work on being a little more calm, staying a little more grounded. Maybe things like, I could be more present in this moment, right? And so even though it doesn't take everything you have, over time, it does end up being quite a workout. But then there are things that take everything we have, right? There are things that are incredibly heavy in our lives, right? And maybe the weight is a lot more, right? It's just to keep going down the road of life takes so much work, let alone trying to actually build that muscle of whatever that thing is. Because sometimes we're dealing with grief, and it takes everything we have to work with that. We're dealing with trauma or forgiveness. It takes all we have. I know that there are some of us here in this room today that are dealing with really serious illnesses or diagnoses, right? And it takes so much just to keep going, just to exist with a burden on that level. You can fill in the blank for yourself, right? I don't know what it is for you. I don't know what you might be going through. I don't know what the little things and the big things are that you are working on. But I do know this, that it doesn't have to simply be a burden. It doesn't have to simply be something that is dragging you down. It can also be an opportunity. It can be an opportunity to work on something. And if we're going to talk about this, and if we're going to spend this series, and I'm going to invite you to think about what your work is, I thought I'd at least start by being a little transparent about what some of my work is. So I thought I'd tell a few little stories about the things that I'm working on in life. There was once a week in my life where I left my keys in my ignition with the car running, and I locked myself outside of the car twice in 1 week. I had AAA had to come, and they had to break my door open, right? This tells me that I'm working on being more present, right? Being more aware, being in the moment. I used to live in Seattle, and I would drive to visit my parents in Northern California. I did this drive, every couple of months. It's a 12-hour drive. And when I did this drive by myself, I tried to consolidate that drive into 2 or less bathroom breaks, okay? That's extreme, okay? And that is to tell you that I am working on trying to be less in a hurry in life, okay? Trying to take things slower. Now, my work goes on and on. The list of the things that I'm working on goes on and on. And throughout this series, if you come back, I'll tell you more about my crap, right? And the things I'm working on. But the reality is that we all have it. We all have stuff that we're working on. It's going to be unique for all of us because of our upbringings, our experiences, the things that you've gone through that made you who you are and shaped the way you see the world. And there's even a deeper component, right? Because you think, well, I got some of my stuff from my parents, and they really got some of that from their parents, and it goes on and on and on. And there's really an ancestral component to the things that you and I might be working on. The reality is, the hard truth is that there are going to be areas of your life where a little more is required of you than the person sitting next to you. And they have areas of their life where more is required of them than of you. But the beautiful thing is that we can support each other in this, that you are not alone. And if this is a gym, then you might be working out over here and I might be working out over there, but we have each other. We can support each other. We can remind each other that it's going to be okay, that we're going to get there, because we all have something that we're working on. I have a friend who's an elementary school teacher, and in one of her classes, she had a young boy who had a difficult time saying his R's. So it would sound something more like his O's, right? And he received the brunt of a lot of teasing because of this. You know how we can be when we're in elementary school. And then this girl came into the class, and she had a hard time saying her C's. So it probably sounded something a little more like her thieves, right? And she started to receive more of the brunt of the teasing. And one day, some of the classmates were making fun of her, and this young boy stood up because he knew what that felt like. He stood up, commanded the whole room, and he said, "Hey, she might be working on her C's, I'm working on my R's, but we're all working on something," okay? And I love that story, and I love that moment because it reminds me of life, and it reminds me of this journey that we're on. We are all working on something. Friends, what are you working on? And the question is, I find this to be so powerful. The question is, what if by working on that thing, right, or more likely those many things, what if there's an inside-out effect that happens, whereas you start to look within and change your internal reality, that there is an effect that ripples out into our relationships and our communities and even our world. So it starts within, right? And it starts with really that internal work. And what it does is it can change the way that we perceive things. How many of us know that it is our human tendency to focus on the negative, right? It's our evolutionary wiring. And look, let's be real. If we look out at the world today and you think, well, yeah, I'm focusing on all the negative because there is a lot of negative. And I'm not going to pretend that there isn't a lot of negative out in the world today. But there's also an opportunity here that when we look out at a world that is not at peace, we can, if we so choose, go inward and ask ourselves, where am I not at peace? Not simply where is the world not at peace, but also what is not at peace within myself. For anything that happens in the world is a mirror and reflection of our own internal state. The Dalai Lama said, we can never obtain peace in the outer world until we make peace with ourselves. And that work is quiet, often invisible, but essential. This series is an invitation into that invisible work. That often unrecognized work. That work that is intimate because really it exists primarily in the privacy of your own heart. And yet that is where the change begins. You work on things in the privacy of your own heart and your own mind, but you also begin to see and experience things differently in the privacy of your own heart and mind. How many of us are like, well, we're talking about seeing things differently. Jake, I would love to see things differently. I would love to see the world differently because the way I am looking at the world right now, it is not really working for my nervous system. Anyone feel that? Now, the hard truth is it doesn't really go well when we try to just convince ourselves to believe something different. That's just not how things work. How many of you have successfully been like, I'm going to change my beliefs on something? Okay, all right, good, all good. It just doesn't work that way. You can't be like, all right, I'm putting in a calendar, notice Tuesday at 2:30, I'm going to change my perspective on the world, all right? We're going to kind of get that out of the way. That's just not how life works. I wish it did, but there is the possibility of change. There is the possibility of new thinking and new ways of feeling and new ways of seeing, but it happens in a bit of a reverse order. Mystic Father Richard Rohr says it like this: we do not think ourselves into new ways of living, we live ourselves into new ways of thinking. Friends, when it comes to the ways that we are thinking, the things that we are seeing, the things that we are believing, What if these things are actually preceded by how we live in the world, how we show up in the world? The truth that has been embodied rather than agreed upon in our minds, right? Because until this becomes internal work, they're just concepts, they're just ideas. I'll give you an example. Like maybe you're out there and you're like, I really want to see the good in humanity because I'm having such a hard time feeling like things are going well. I'm having such a hard time believing that we as a human species are redemptive and lovable and that we have good qualities. You might be so discouraged. You might be feeling like I cannot see the good in humanity right now. And we know that we cannot force our minds to see things differently, right? We know that that's a futile attempt. But the question is this: what if we, as Richard Rohr encourages us, we kind of made that shift? We started with how we lived, and we started from the inside out. So it might look something like this. What if, when you think about all the things that you want to see in humanity, right? You were like, I wish we were more compassionate as a species and more loving and generous and kind and forgiving. What if you, instead of focusing on all the ways that humanity could do a better job, what if you started looking at yourself and you said, where can I be more loving? Where can I be more compassionate? Where can I be more generous? And then as you begin to access that within yourself, you find more love within, you find more compassion. And then as you did that, it would naturally flow into your interactions and your relationships and the communities that you're a part of. So as you become more loving, as you become less reactive, you will naturally invite that in others. You will naturally experience others mirroring that back to you. How could you not, if you showed up as a more gentle energy, how would you not experience the same from others, right? Because we're always mirroring to each other. And perhaps as you did this, you would start to experience people and communities and a world that felt more loving because you started with you. And ultimately, ever so slowly, that might change your perspective on the world itself. Because if you're interacting with a more kind humanity in your own sphere, in your own circle, how would you not begin to change your entire view of the whole thing? So it starts within. It starts with taking responsibility for the ways that you can be more of what you want to see in the world. And if we can do that, it's just simply going to make for a freer and lighter experience of life. Doing the work brings freedom, right? The bottom line is this: whatever comes up for you as work, as the thing that you are working on within yourself, as whatever isn't easy and whatever is challenging for you, it's showing you where you could be lighter and you could be freer in your life. This isn't about judging yourself and going, well, look at how far I have to go. Look at all this work I need to do on myself. It's not about that. It's simply the recognition that when something has power over you, right? When there's some situation in your life that is constricting you, that you are less than free in that area of life. And I know that we all have areas of life that we want to feel more free. You know, Tom spoke about driving. I related strongly to that. I wish I was more free as a driver. I don't mean like running red lights and being like, that was fine. No, I just mean, I wish I could be more free with how I treated others. Like if someone cut me off, right? I wish that I could just look at them and send them love. And I could say, hey, they are on their journey, and I release them into this world, and I let myself just feel the lightness of letting everyone be what they need to be. Now, here's the reality. How many of you know that is not at all where I'm at? Like, I have so far to go. That's not. And I can recognize, it's a good example. I can recognize, I have a lot more freedom that I could achieve there. I have a lot more lightness that I could achieve there. So what if it's not a problem that this comes up? What if this actually means that those areas of your life where you're feeling stuck, those areas of your life where it kind of feels like quicksand, that these can be seen as a gift, as a compass, showing us what might be left for us to clear out, right? That whatever the things are that show up in our lives, that we're going, oh, okay, this still has a weight and a charge to it, that the more we work with it, the lighter it's going to get, the freer that we're going to be. And so if our work that we're doing, if that choice to look within, if it's changing our perspective, if it's making us lighter and freer, how could that version of you not ripple outward into your relationships, your communities, and into the world at large? Doing your work benefits others. How could it not? How could it not? Ram Dass once said, and I love this, I've tried to remember this in so many times in my life. He said, I can do nothing for you but work on myself. You can do nothing for me but work on yourself. Now it's interesting. You might find this to be a little extreme because you're like, well, you could do stuff for me that is not working on yourself. Like you could bring me ice cream. I don't know how that's working on yourself, but please do. But the reality is, I think if you just take this from a more poetic, philosophical standpoint, this idea that what if the greatest gift we could give to others is the best version of ourselves that we can be in that moment? This is hard for us because a lot of us have people in our lives that are hurting. A lot of us have people in our lives that need help. And we might innately understand that we can't fix other people. We can't make choices for other people. We certainly can't do someone else's work for them. But what we can do is we can work on ourselves while in relationship with others. Because when we recognize what we can't change, when we can't fix, we're then freed to start with ourselves and to ask ourselves, how can I be kinder? How can I be less reactive? How can I be loving? And perhaps as you do that work on yourself, that this gentle invitation arises for those in your life, maybe for those who really need it. And it's just this invitation that says, it's possible, it is possible to become less reactive. It is possible to become more free, even in difficult moments of life. And just by being you, and just by honoring your own journey, you start to bring light into someone else's world. Not by drawing attention to yourself, not by forcing them to see it, but just by being who you are and honoring your own work and taking that responsibility. So next time you're in conflict, next time you're scratching your head at someone else's choices, or you're scratching your head and clutching your heart at what's going on in the world, maybe the opportunity is to look at yourself first, knowing that it actually is creating a positive ripple and it is affecting those things in a positive way. As we close today and as we kind of move into the rest of the series that we're going to be exploring over these next few weeks, I do just want to leave with a couple of caveats because I know that it can feel like a lot of pressure to figure ourselves out and the pressure and the tyranny of trying to constantly work on ourselves and be the best and maximize all that. That can be a problem in and of itself. And so I just want to be clear about a couple things. The work is totally optional. I hope this is good news for you to know that no one is grading you here at Aldea, and you are loved and you belong no matter what you choose to do, how you choose to approach this. But there is an opportunity here, there is an invitation here that maybe we could experience more freedom and lightness in our relationships and even in the way that we see the world. But this can be done at any pace, right? Like I know that we're all busy. We all have so much going on in our lives. And the idea that we would turn every single thing that we go through that's hard into a learning opportunity, into a growing opportunity, sometimes that in and of itself sounds exhausting. And friends, sometimes we do just need to watch Netflix and turn our brain off a little bit. The idea here is not to create a sense of urgency, right? But simply to have an awareness of what's possible right? That when things come up as they will, you can simply have an awareness that, oh, here's an opportunity. It's not linear. It's not a linear journey, right? This journey of life, this path of life, it often feels like 2 steps forward, 3 steps to the side, 4 diagonally. I love weddings, but one of the things about weddings that's really hard for me is anytime there's sort of like an organized line dance or like the electric slide, I'm like, get me out of there. It's not my thing. But the reality is life is kind of like those dances. It's like a little bit of like slide to the left, slide to the right. It's like it's not a linear journey, right? You're going to hit moments where you're like, I thought I was so much further along, and this is taking me down. I don't know why this is happening, but that is life. And I hope throughout this series that you experience some permission to not be perfect, some permission to fail, permission to struggle, because you are human, right? And you're loved, and your struggle matters, and it's okay. It is okay. This series is actually not about being down on ourselves and thinking, well, look at all this work I need to do. It's simply recognizing that there is a paradox present. That something really fascinating happens when we take responsibility for what's going on in our own hearts and our own bodies and our own minds, instead of always looking outside and blaming others, blaming the world. We actually are empowering ourselves because we are making a clear distinction between what we can control and what we can't. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic philosopher. He was also a Roman emperor at one point. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Friends, realize this and you may reduce your anxiety quite a bit because you aren't going to be striving to control a world or a person that is not meant to be controlled. Friends, realize this and you may find peace because much of the chaos that you're experiencing might actually be in your own mind. This series is really just a subtle shift, subtle yet immensely powerful, between recognizing what we cannot control and the things that we can, which really start in here. So friends, may we pay attention to our lives, that even when they are difficult, even when we go through incredibly tough times, that there is always an opportunity to learn something and to grow. That when we feel stuck, perhaps right there is an opportunity to recognize, oh, I can be more free, I can be lighter here. Where we feel chaos in the world, where we feel chaos in our lives, maybe this is an opportunity to find peace amidst the storms inside of myself. Because whether it's your C's or your R's, we are all working on something.